Yeah.
I feel like I know some, but not all.
Yeah, this is a good question.
No, it's actually
The
a very
answer
good,
is you're never going to know everything
it's
about
a very
it.
good question because he's trying to establish what knowledge is known and what isn't.
Exactly.
And the answer being is we collectively know a little bit to make it work, but not enough to make it work.
So, real quick, how many of you have had NCO experience of maybe about a year or more? Okay, keep your hands raised. 2 years or more. 3 years or more.
Corporal count?
Yes.
Oh, actually, yeah.
4 years? 5 years. 6 years. 7 years. 8 years. All right.
Dang.
You didn't specify if it was Civil War or military, so that's why I
I
kept my
didn't.
hand up.
I did not.
That's the case. I should have raised my.
Oh, that's right.
Ha you got got.
I did not. So, who here can tell me what the basic responsibilities of a private are?
Listen to your corporals. Do what you're told. Don't think. If you have questions, ask questions.
More or less, yeah. So, a private is the workhorse of the Army. They are the muscle. They're the ones that get stuff done. However, most privates lack any sense of direction. How do we solve that?
NCOs, starting with the corporal.
Indeed. So, a corporal will generally be in charge of a squad. Who can tell me how large a squad's supposed to be?
5 or 6?
It's 8 to 12,
Okay.
Yep.
sometimes 20 depending on numbers, but 8 to 12 was the ideal average.
Okay, I'm thinking.
For NCWC purposes, it's probably going to be more closer to your answer. But for a realistic, ideal world, it'll be more of his answer. So roughly around 12.
Like 3 fire teams, something like that, make it.
Well, you're thinking you're going into modern military with,
Yeah,
with
that's-
that, but
unfortunately,
in the
that's
modern
not really
military
that
is modeled but not as the same. And then for every 4 corporals, ideally you had 1 sergeant. And again, NCWC wise, we're about 1 sergeant to every 2 corporals. And then beyond that, it just you double everything. It's like every 4
Go for it. Lean on the rail.
every 4 squads
Why
you
I
should
put the class
have,
So,
or every 4 platoons
Yep.
worth of men. So 8 squads you should have.
gentlemen, if
1
you need to
lieutenant.
sit down, lean against the rail, move
If
around,
I did that
what you
math
gotta
right,
do.
I didn't sleep well last night. My math might be a little off on that.
I'm an NCO. I've been on NCO for most of my reenacting experience. My old sergeant had a saying, a good soldier never stands when he can sit down, never just sits down when he can lays down. And he did emphasize the zzz on those words.
Good old
And never
Weldon.
just lays down when he can takes his sleeps.
Good old Weldon. Yeah, good old Weldon.
In fairness, he wasn't sober when he said it, but there was wisdom behind it. So, a corporal's going to be in charge of a squad. Who can tell me what the next bit is above a squad? Next body of men.
Gonna be a platoon?
Platoon, yes. Who would be in charge of a platoon?
Hint, hint, I just said it.
Yeah, sergeant.
Yep, a sergeant. What's the next highest up body?
You would have a lieutenant overseeing the sergeant.
First sergeant?
I'm talking about body of men.
Oh,
I like talking about a body of men.
company?
Sorry, say that again.
A company?
Company.
Alright.
Who, in that sense, is going to be in charge of the company?
Then it'd be the first sergeant.
Trick question, it'd be the company commander or a lieutenant.
Oh, shoot.
It depends on the circumstance. If we're going into a proper formal formation, if we're going into battle, if we go into an area where we're probably going to be losing life or we are on campaign, odds are good it's going to be the company commander. But when we're in camp or on fatigue detail, that's going to be the first sergeant. Now, the corporal is the first, as we've established, is the first rank We all understand that, right? The first rank that you move up from private. They're the ones going to be directing their squads on the task at hand. They're the ones that are saying, all right, so we got to cut firewood. Who here knows how to cut firewood? No one here knows how to cut firewood. So the corporal's going to be in charge of educating his squad on how to properly and safely cut firewood. Or how to load a rifle. How to do some of the basic stuff of being a soldier. A corporal, ideally, is a private who's mastered all of his tasks and is willing to teach his fellow privates on how to master those tasks. Once he has done that, he should be focusing on how he can start learning the next role up, the job of the sergeant. So, corporal here, and the other corporal here who isn't wearing his chevrons, would normally be reporting to the sergeant here. Their squads would answer to him to make his platoon. Alright. Ideally, a company has 2 sergeants. So, how many corporals is that going to make? If two corporals report to 1 sergeant.
That'd be 4.
So, 4 corporals, 2 sergeants. How many platoons is that?
Should have 4 platoons to a company.
In the NCWC.
We're talking sort of NCWC.
Okay.
We're lucky if we make a platoon.
Be specific on that because we do not want to confuse
Yeah.
how it would have been versus what we're doing because we don't have the numbers.
So,
Yes.
in all the classes that we're giving here, this is for the NCWC. This does not pertain to actual historical formations.
So for the NCWC, yes, you would have
If we're lucky, 2 platoons.
2 platoons and 1 sergeant or 2 sergeants if you have the bodies for it.
So those sergeants report to the first sergeant. The first sergeant reports to 1 man in the company and 1 man alone, and that's the company commander. Whether that be a lieutenant, a captain, a butter bar's lieutenant, whoever's in command of the company.
And in some extremely rare cases, because I haven't seen the numbers in the 1st Min or the 69th in a while, you might have a platoon commander that the first sergeant would report to. But again, extremely rare because we haven't had those numbers in a while.
So, primarily, the NCO is the supervisor of the workforce. The ones that get shit done. Now, speaking... Sir, would you mind deafening yourself? Now, speaking on the other side of things, once officers get involved, things get complicated. Once officers get involved, things get fucked.
That is where the first sergeant is supposed to, on occasion,
So,
reach out and smack the officer and reset
How do we
him.
buffer that? Well, we
First
buffer
sergeant.
that with an NCO who knows his shit. And the guy who knows his shit is supposed to have the nice little diamondy bit.
I'm waiting for the smack.
There, he's been reset.
Sir, with due respect, sir, go fuck yourself, sir.
With your permission.
Alright. I'll be court-martialed for that later. Please? Please?
Only if it comes
Yeah, he's
out.
getting the punishment's a promotion later.
Now, the officer here is supposed to be a gentleman. He's not supposed to sully himself with work. He is supposed to sully himself with ink and a nice little pointy bit called a sword. His means of direction. But in this case, since most of us here are enlisted, we're not going to touch much on being an officer. More or less because I'm going to have to be learning that shit this year anyway. But being an NCO, our job is to figure out how to make things happen. This guy's going to come to me and say, all right, First Sergeant, we got this mission ahead. I'm like, all right, sir. No, say no more. I'll figure it out. Then I'm going to go to this guy and say, all right, Sergeant, we're about to go on campaign.
Oh boy.
we need A, B, C, and D here.
And my response to that is none of these men know how to campaign, but I have an idea and I will teach them.
Exactly. So, he's gonna go to his corporal here, and corporal, you're...
I'm a mega bitch. Okay, remember this is being recorded. Let's be nice for the recording. Pretty much my job is just to... My job is to get everything going.
Squad A, you're going to be in charge of procuring rations. Squad B, your job's going to be ensuring that the weapons are ready. Squad C, you guys are going to be getting camp ready to go. Squad D, you guys are on,
You're on
how do I
picket.
say bitch duty in PG-13?
You're on duty. Female dog duty.
Female dog duty.
I think
That
there are a lot
sounds
of
much worse.
That does sound worse.
You said PG, so
I bet the
PG-13.
The
that could go
79th,
on
ladies and
one
gentlemen,
bitch.
making friends at all turns.
I'm sure it'll come to me with time with my promotion, but by all means.
Alright. So, in the cases, so Squad A, we need you to go procure our rations for the evening. Squad B, your job is to make sure that we have requisitioned all of the rounds that we need for this campaign. Squad C, your job is to break camp, get all of our tents down, get everything ready. Squad D, add on picket.
Now,
That would be the role of a sergeant to direct the corporals. Corporals would then make that squad do that specific task.
this is where things break down into details. Squad A might not know where to procure rations. Squad B might not know what the hell they're doing. That's where the corporals and sergeants step in. In the 79th, we promote on those who are actually able to do the job. If you see someone in the 79th with chevrons on, it means they know their job, they know their role, or they are in the process of training for that role. So, if I go to Corporal Strasbaugh and say, I need rifle cleaning done, and Sergeant Davies off on something else, these guys don't know how to do it. Corporal Strasbaugh I can trust to know he knows how to clean a rifle. He knows how to demonstrate how to clean a rifle. And he can get it done in a timely manner.
Yeah.
And then I can also trust him to supervise rifle cleaning.
And supervise is a very loaded term because sometimes you have to be directly standing there because maybe you can't trust them to do it unsupervised. Or you know you can trust them to do it, you're doing something else while monitoring and stepping in when you need to. Because it's always good to let your corporals figure things out on their own too.
The best way I can describe the NCO Corps of the military is that it is a nervous system.
and we're a very nervous bunch.
Especially after 4 pints of coffee.
If I may, first sergeant.
Yeah.
So in the case of us going to campaign, as a company commander, my job, I sit here and I tell the first sergeant, we're marching out on campaign at 15:30. Get it done. At which point,
We'll be ready at 15:15, sir.
I step away.
We'll be ready
As
at
an officer,
noon.
my job's done. This is when the first sergeant goes to work.
All right, Sergeant Davey. We gotta be. We are nowhere near ready.
Do you think? I get it done. I can make no miracle promises.
Here's what we need to do: A, B, C, and D.
We need
Delegate
ra-
as you see
we
fit.
need rations. We need to make sure everyone's got their gear issued. I'm gonna go to supply, make sure that gets done. I'll get my corporals together. We'll make it happen. I got any questions? First sergeant, I will come to you. Stay the hell out of my way with respect.
And then I'll be floating around, keeping an eye on things. And if I see something not going wrong, like say Private AB over there is about to blow up the camp because he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing.
Now I say first sergeant, stay the hell out of my way with all due respect,
What the sexy is doing?
because I'm very much, once I get something in my brain, I have a hard time getting that out to people to delegate, which is a weakness I'm working on. And I've been working with Sam and my leadership core above me and below me long enough. They know that I will get it done. Try not to interfere with my line of thinking.
All right.
That's not going to be for everybody.
You got a
That's just a
question back
unique
there.
thing for me.
What are the
difference in duties between first sergeant and the sergeant?
So the first sergeant is the top NCO of the whole company as a body. The sergeant here is going to be in charge of a platoon, which is going to be one section of the company.
So, to put it into easy to understand modern terms. So, as a company commander, I'm a plant manager. My job is to oversee the entire facility. First sergeant here, congratulations, he is now the shift manager. He oversees everybody that's going on and everything that's happening inside the plant as far as people are concerned.
I would be the area manager.
Yeah. Department lead. He takes care of the department. Task lead. He can handle a small group of people to get a specific task done.
And it breaks down even further from that. The corporal might have a private that he can rely on to help get things done because maybe we're trying to train him to be an NCO. So then there would be another level there. He would be a senior private with authority, backed by the corporal, backed by everyone going up the chain.
Now, to continue with that chain, there is one NCO rank that's higher than first sergeant, and that'll be the sergeant major here.
Get
So,
out of here.
every morning, the first sergeants, the top dog NCOs of each company, will go and report to him. And they'll get their orders for the day. Say, all right, we need to get wagons out of camp. There's going to be a heat advisory. There will be this event at this time. Make sure your men are there. The parade's going to be there. There will be this formation here. Guard mount, give me your sacrificial bodies for guard mount. That's going to be his job. And when it comes necessary, the sergeant major's the one guy you don't want to piss off. Because he's been an NCO longer than anyone else, and the first sergeants know better than to mess with him. So, any questions so far? Jack.
I was also going to remind you that the other people you don't want to piss off are your camp cooks.
Yeah. The unofficial NCOs. The ones that will spit in your coffee and oats in the morning.
You never know where those spices came from.
I know where they came from.
And that extra rank, that senior private that I mentioned that might be training, there is an actual name for them. They are brevet. And brevets exist, as far as I know, only in the Army. Didn't hear it in the Marine Corps too much, but I know it still exists in the Army. And you have all the power and authority without the rank.
Essentially,
And
you're just unpaid.
sometimes, when I did my little stint in the reserves, the first sergeant was a breveted first sergeant. He wore the first sergeant's patch and was paid as a first sergeant, but when he was no longer first sergeant, he went back down to staff sergeant or sergeant first class. Which is weird when you refer to him as first sergeant for 3 years and they suddenly are no longer wearing that patch. But
Just about to segue onto that. That's what I touched on, the sergeant major.
any of the companies in the NCWC who are looking to train up guys to be leaders, they're privates. You start them in a brevet's position, and that's a great way to teach them. We had it with 2 of our corporals, and we'll continue to do it. You can do the same thing with sergeants. Hey, we're going to brevet you as a sergeant. You're not ready to be that yet, but we now have 3 corporals, and you're the most senior of them.
You're getting a taste of the responsibility.
You can do the same thing with the first sergeant, but it's not as easy when you have a first sergeant who's always around. Thank you.
You need training. Best way to do it is experience. So, to continue. The sergeant major here will get the roster for guard mount. And then he's going to hand it off to battalion, and they're going to decide who's going to be the officer of the day, sergeant of the guard, corporal of the guard. Ideally, it's all going to be from the same unit. There was a few cases where no one really knew what the devil they were doing, and we had an officer of the day from the 69th, we had a sergeant of the guard from the 79th, and we had corporals of the guard from the 1st Minnesota. Now, that being said, let's get into some of the responsibilities on guard mount. While we have touched on some of the company responsibilities of some of these NCOs, their responsibilities also extend a little bit outside of the company, especially when it comes to guard mount. So, in the morning, the rosters will be handed in to this guy. And during morning parade, traditionally, the names for guard mount are called out, and after parade's dismissed, those names report to battalion. It will also be announced during parade that whichever company is in charge of Officer of the Day and Sergeant of the Guard will also report to battalion. Ideally, they should know this ahead of time, but it's not a perfect world. So, the Officer of the Day, his jobs are relatively simple, especially when it comes to reenactments. In the real world, it's not as simple, but I'll let him elaborate on that because he's the only one here between us who's been an Officer of the Day.
So the role of the Officer of the Day is you are the active body monitoring battalion. It is the job of the Officer of the Day to give the battalion staff a break. So anything that pops up, it's my responsibility to handle it. For example, say our pickets that are out there, there's an issue with Confederates playing around with them a little too much. I get called in to handle that instead of the colonel. And when you're the Officer of the Day, you receive, for that time being, battalion level command, authority. At which point I can walk to any company and be like, this is an issue, fix it. And now they have to take what I'm saying as if it's the colonel saying it. That is a simple way of explaining an Officer of the Day. Essentially, I just become a huge manager for...
They essentially assume all the powers of the highest ranking person in camp.
Now,
And you better listen to them.
Yep. Moving on. We go on to the Sergeant of the Guard. The Sergeant of the Guard reports to battalion, the Officer of the Day, Sergeant Major. Looks like we got a car coming in.
No. Sergeant of the Guard, as it sounds, can be any sergeant. It's not just, it may not just be me doing it, it could be a first sergeant. Ideally, you might want to delegate it to a sergeant, but if you know they're busy, there's nothing wrong with first sergeant taking Sergeant of the Guard. Matter of fact, there was a couple times last year I should have been Sergeant of the Guard and you took it because I was busy.
Well, usually, traditionally, it's supposed to be a first sergeant.
And see, that was something I learned recently last year too.
So, first sergeant gets to put on his sash in his own special way and go manage guard mount. His job is to make sure that the corporal of the guard, or himself, depending on how he chooses to run it, gets the guards to their post on time.
Chaplain.
Now, the sergeant of the guard may choose to delegate most of his duties to the corporal. Also, depending on battalion. The sergeant of the guard may have a little more flexibility on scheduling guard mount, especially if he's working hand in fist with the sergeant major. For instance, say Private AB is put on a certain guard mount, but that time coincides with right about the time that he's got to take off. That's where the sergeants come in and they figure out how to shift things around so that they don't have to bug the officers on this. The officers don't care so long as things get done. If things don't get done, then excrement rolls down the hill. And things start to break down. It's the NCOs that oil the machine to make it work. You good, Linda? Alright. So, the guard's going to get read out. The first sergeant, or the sergeant of the guard, is going to read off the roster, and if necessary, go collect the bodies that have failed to report to guard duty. It happens, inevitably. I have had to track down people, mostly from your unit, to get them on guard mount on time. So, once the guard's assembled, he's going to go to the corporal of the guard and say, all right, corporal, Private A needs to go to this post, Private B needs to go to this post, Private C needs to be guarding headquarters. And then it's going to fall on the corporal to manage that. Part of the reason there are 2 NCOs is that things happen. Sometimes the enemy will come play with your pickets. It's been known to happen. We've exchanged fire before. Got yelled at later for it, but we still exchanged fire. It still fell on the sergeant of the guard to go deal with it. So, we have our guard. So, Private A, Private B, Private C, all reporting. Corporal, post your guards. The corporal's job will be there, and he's going to be there to manage the guards. Make sure they have water. Make sure they have their bayonets. Make sure they are at the proper post and they understand what their orders are. They're going to walk this beat. They're going to guard this post. And then it's going to fall on those NCOs to make sure those guards get relieved at the proper time, too. It's also going to fall on those NCOs to explain what the proper courtesies are for officers and what to do when an adversary comes up to their guards. Ideally, when an adversary comes up to your guard, they should be calling for the corporal of the guard or the sergeant of the guard. One of the two. Either way, an angry NCO is going to have to come deal with it. But the corporal will basically more or less fall on what he's been doing, explaining how to do the job, educating. The sergeant needs to be managing. Any questions, confusion, or anything? I'm hearing silence. Yes, no, do we understand?
Yes, First Sergeant.
All right. That was a very unenthusiastic bit.
So, because I totally walked up into that, this goes into some military courtesy. It's going to be touched on later. If I say, does that make sense? If the first sergeant says, does that make sense? Or if the second sergeant says, does that make sense? Your response will be in unison in a loud voice. Yes, sir! Yes, first sergeant! Yes, sergeant! Reason why? Half of us are dead. We've been fighting for years, right?
Standing too close to the artillery.
But that also lets us know that you were listening and paying attention. Now, I don't have to worry about you, and that you know what we're talking about. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Good. It's a little better. Be a little louder next time, but good job.
I'm hearing some quiet Minnesotans. Now, part of the reason for this is not just because we're deaf, but it's for proper communication as well. Like I said, the NCO Corps is the nervous system of the Army. So, when he says we got to do this thing, that's sending a signal to me saying, okay, I need to get this, this, and this going on the sergeants. Sergeants will say, okay, I need to get this, this, and going on my platoons. They'll go to their corporals. I need to get this, this, and this done. It's communication. It's what makes a company run effectively. If you're not communicating and your guys don't know where the hell they are or what the hell they're supposed to be doing, that falls on you because you're not communicating. So communicate with your charge, with your NCOs.
It's always better to ask questions than not get any questions done.
Exactly. For instance, Corporal, I said we need to get this done. What's happened? Why isn't it done?
I'm having some problems with the privates at the moment. It's getting rectified.
And sometimes the problem is communication. Sometimes it is not articulated loudly, clearly, concisely, and it gets lost in the line. Who here played telephone growing up? How often would you start with one phrase and it would come back totally different? It's like that. So, as NCOs, as privates, as enlisted, we need to make sure we are communicating clearly and making sure that the message is getting across.
And also for the corporals, the way it works with me, I dumb it down. If they say we need to get this, this, and this done, I'm like, okay, we start with this first, get that job done, and then I send it on to the next job. Because it's been proven, I've seen it done. Guys who get more than one thing going through their head, nothing gets done right. So it's always better, at least for a corporal, start simple and basic. Then as soon as that job gets done, go on to the next job. That way all the privates are staying busy, and that way nothing gets lost in communication. Obviously, it does happen, but that's life.
And that falls on guard mount too. I have had guys that go out, they report to guard duty, and then I have to go track down the sergeant of the guard because he was not relieved on his set time. And we're about to go into battle in like 5 minutes, and he's still on guard post. And he hasn't been given ammo, he hasn't been given his lunch. He's hungry, his canteen's empty. Well, because there wasn't proper communication.
In worst case scenario, I've been corporal to guard many times. What I have done is if one guy in my group hasn't gotten any food yet, hasn't gotten ammo, gotten ready, I will take his spot and tell him to quickly go get something to eat, get ready, and then come back. So that way he's ready to go, and the job's still done.
So, speaking of guard mount, and I promised I would touch on this, who here can tell me what the proper military courtesies are for rendering salutes to officers while on guard mount?
I know that for NCOs it's this, right?
No. Don't ever salute an NCO.
Okay.
We work for our money. So, if you see anyone with chevrons, don't salute them. See anyone with stars on their collar or shoulder boards, that's worthy of a salute. Now, that being said, for certain ranks, there go for certain salutes. Here's the cheater method. You see one line of buttons on this man. Odds are good, that's just your standard salute. You see a double-breasted bit, that usually indicates a major or higher. Go to present arms. The more buttons they have, the more important they are.
Now on the Union side, that doesn't follow us too well. We got to look on their shoulder.
Yep, because our colonel goes for what? One? Yeah.
Our colonel decided to be a little cheap.
I'm in the wrong side.
You're disrupting my class. You're going to be doing push-ups later.
I'm going right now.
Not right now, you're not. You'll be disrupting my class again.
So worst case scenario, always look on the shoulder. If you don't see anything there, don't salute them.
Who here can identify, real quick, the difference between a captain and a colonel? I know you bloody well should. What should be on a captain's shoulder boards?
2 bars.
What should be on a Confederate captain's collar?
Bullet hole?
3 bars.
Sergeant Major, you can deal with him as you so please.
Later.
So we can identify captains. Can anyone here not identify a captain, a lieutenant, a major, a colonel, a general?
A lieutenant, a second lieutenant has no bars, and a first lieutenant has 1 bar, captain has 2 bars.
Yes. Not the question I'm asking.
Yeah.
The question I'm asking is who here cannot? Can everyone identify a captain? You can't.
I don't know that very well.
I would definitely talk with your first sergeant on that.
Look for the two butter bars. The 4 butter bars, but you know, if they're too close together, that's a good one.
So
For the
for
Union.
a federal officer, I have very different uniforms. We have the standard one, which has basically this, except there's a big gold band around it that says captain. There's another one that I have the pins here on the collar, and it's just going to be 2. And then I have this one that is just the bars, right? Because there's different stylings that came about throughout the war.
It'll dry out tomorrow. We're not too worried.
On the Confederate side, they went incredibly more simple. You have the better collar to show. At which point, all the rank is going to be along here for Confederate officers, across the line. Now you can also tell, because most often they would have a sleeve break. That's very decorative.
Dinner! Show military courtesy to the officers.
Yes. Regardless of what side you're on, they are brought into camp under, say, a truce or peace or just coming in, and you are on guard mount. You should render proper military courtesies because you're saluting the rank. You're not saluting the man.
Yeah. So it's one of those things that if you want to be cheeky, sure, go ahead. Disrespect the rank. Be mindful of the consequences. On the NCWC side, the people that have achieved those officer ranks, they're there because they've earned it. And the salute is the response and recognition of what they've earned.
Yeah. Saw Colonel Bishop coming by this morning, and even though we're still in this kind of non-period setting and such, I still offered him a salute as I passed. I have been, let's say, lightly reprimanded about that before in years past by my own colonel for not doing so. Now, granted, it was a different colonel at the time, but at this time, I was taught that you salute the rank, you don't salute the man. So, whether they're wearing blue or gray or butternut or red, green, yellow, I'm still saluting the rank.
And it's good to still, like what Jake was saying, it's the Captain Wheelman is saying is they've earned the rank. This club can't exist without people stepping up into those positions. You know, at the end of the day, hopefully all of us are getting to know each other and we're all forming friendships. So you still want to give them that proper respect. Is there those oddball salutes that happen behind closed doors? Absolutely. Don't do that when the public's around. You know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to elaborate.
Yeah. So, that being said, I am going to offer a few tips to everyone here who has come out here because they're interested in leadership, NCOs, or just because they were simply bored.
I feel like it was mostly bored looking.
It was mostly
I know.
boredom.
I know. They're not asleep yet.
I don't know. Newell looks pretty asleep. Can't see anything behind those glasses.
Roberts looks like he's about to fall asleep. Newell, give him a kick.
He's just telling off the voices in his head. He keeps
So-
telling them they're wrong, because they are.
Couple tips. As an NCO, as a unit, build up your NCOs as a team. There have been times where my unit has been put into hellish situations where things are just going to crap. And the only reason we don't burn out, the only reason we don't quit, the only reason we succeed is because we've learned to work together as a team. We've learned to trust each other. If you don't trust, if you don't communicate, if you don't learn to laugh a little bit at yourself,
Shall I kick them?
There's nothing there. Where do you go?
you as a unit are not going to succeed. So, that being said, as one first sergeant on his way out, one of the biggest bits of advice I can offer you guys, as a club, as a unit, build up your NCOs, build up your young leaders. If you see someone seeking responsibility, give them a little bit more responsibility. See how they do. Supervise, educate, never stop learning. And learn to work together.
Another way of putting what he just said is train to the next level. So your privates, if you have that just token private that is just one of your go-to soldiers, he's always getting the job done, have him step up as an acting corporal in some position.
Yep.
And then when he becomes a corporal, have him jump into a sergeant role every once in a while. Train to that next level because, hey, once first sergeant gets shot on the battlefield, guess who the next first sergeant's going to be?
Exactly.
This guy.
Oh, yeah.
And then your corporal's going to move up to his position. So train to that next position, and that way you're always constantly learning.
So,
if I may, First Sergeant, to kind of...
Yeah.
I'll do the classic First Sergeant thing and piggyback off the Sergeant. So, that training that the Sergeant Major was talking about doesn't have to be formal. It's not that a man from the company said, you know what, you're doing a great job. We're going to start to put you in these positions. Watch the man next to you. Learn through watching. Figure out what's going on before you find yourself in those positions. We're never done learning. The single greatest disservice you can do to yourself is dismiss a learning opportunity. Say you looked at our schedule today and say, what do I need to learn how to be a casualty? I've been doing this for X amount of years. Congratulations. You've just now committed the worst sin you can do. Prideful arrogance. Right? How many learned something during that class that was there? How many of you thought that you would learn something? Easy, bozo. It could be the simplest topic.
Right there.
How to clean our weapon. The basic thing. Maybe you go learn and watch somebody else do it and you learn something new. A better way. Or just a different way.
Yeah.
As the highest ranking non-commissioned officer here and new to this position myself, I'm going to offer just a little piece of advice to everybody, north or south, whatever side you're on, that just for an example, we have our dress parade at 9 o'clock in the morning. I tell the first sergeants, this is where I want you guys to be, formation at 9 o'clock. It goes down, it goes all the way down the chain. I say 9 o'clock, what happens, as we know, anybody in the prior military, regular military, National Guard, things always get bumped. So next thing you know, you guys are forming up for dress parade at 8 o'clock. That is the moment where you guys are just sitting out there waiting for parade that's not for another hour. Those are your opportunities to do that on just on the fly training. If you guys go up and you show up and you have an hour to kill, sit down just like right now and just say, hey, Donald, you're great at cleaning weapons and muskets. Can you just tell us a little bit about how you go about doing that? And just, I'm going to be watching. Me, as the new sergeant major, if you're just sitting, waiting and waiting and waiting and doing nothing, that's when I'm going to get upset and I'm going to come over and start making sure you guys do have something to do. Those are your opportunities to work with the younger soldiers and move them up into that next position and roll and talk. So, those are great opportunities.
Yeah.
There's a name for it. It's called hit pocket. You're hitting a pocket of time that you have to teach a class.
All right. So we are getting low on time, but I am going to say this: any one of you that ends up becoming an NCO or gets in a leadership position and you're struggling, there are going to be good days and there are going to be bad days. Go to a fellow NCO. Come see me. I don't care if you're wearing gray or blue. You need advice or just someone to have a beer and just listen to you vent about what your company did that was incredibly stupid today. I know the pain, but help each other. Listen to each other. Make time for each other. If you have a company right now that doesn't really have much of a team going on, but you do have a couple corporals, start making a team. You will be rewarded for it. You will be able to delegate more and trust more. I introduced these two, and I thought for this first time I made a terrible mistake. They ended up being one of the most deadly duos that I have got to work with, and I have come to love these guys.
Well, when you make your first charge, you go, oh no. Oh no. He introduces us, and he's thinking it might be slow, it might be fine. Within 5 minutes, we had him going, what have I done? And I can't even remember what we were talking about. It was our normal antics that everybody has seen us do every single day.
But when it comes down to it, when the excrement has hit the oscillation device, I know who I can count on. And it's going to be the team that I helped forge. It's going to be the guys that I have learned to rely on time and time again, and they've come to rely on me as well. It goes both ways. Forge a team. Make it happen. Communicate with each other. And as NCOs, make shit happen. By hook or by crook. Any questions?
No, sir.
And one more bit of advice under the radar from the officer. Sometimes you don't need to always bring a problem to an officer. Go bring it to another fellow first sergeant. We can get shit done faster than an officer. If it goes to an officer, it's going to go up the chain.
Well, first, start at the bottom, and if they can't figure it out, they will find a solution.
So, consult an NCO unless it goes into like a major safety issue where someone did get hurt. Bump it up. Let your officer know so they can take it up to the battalion, and that's one of those times where you do. But if it's something like, hey, I noticed this going on over in your formation over there, Sergeant Schwabel, it might be a safety concern. You might want to address that.
Yeah, Sergeant Swabble, I saw a guy trying to slam fire his pistol and he gashed his hand. You might want to talk to him about that.
Alright. Show him the scar. Show him the scar.
It's also one of those things that the people around you give you the support. Your fellow first sergeants, your fellow NCOs. You will find that there is more information out there that you ever knew was possible.
Yep.
Make friends.
On the flip side of that coin, if you try to carry this alone, if you try to be the only first sergeant that does everything in camp, if you try to be super first sergeant, you will burn yourself out. You will break yourself.
And it gets hard to break from that too.
So teach, build a team, work together. I've been at this for 14 years, gentlemen. I've tried the solo first sergeant act before. It does not end well.
Any solo rank doesn't work.
Nope.
We're a team. That's what's important.
So,
You're a team from the officers down to the privates. We can't do this alone.
So,
Major Reed, you have any words of wisdom for us?
Don't get promoted.
don't piss off the first sergeant. Or the sergeant major.
And a snippet on team building, because team building doesn't have to be just delegating and supervising. You're going to see the 79th doing something that we haven't tried before this year, and we're going to be doing some squad-on-squad games that are going to be to target team building and camaraderie.
And it doesn't just have to stay on the battlefield or at events. I mean, some of the strongest bonds I've made have been out here, but they continued to go stronger when we took that stuff out of events. When we started having events outside, started having barbecues or putting together events that are non-period, or just going out and paintballing and giving each other very sore bruises in some very sensitive areas. But build the team and go above and beyond.
The best key to survival of anything in this organization, from the small unit level all the way up to the battalion level, is form and nurture those friendships. You know, in the last 5 years, the 79th's formed bonds and friendships with, well, most of you sitting here. And they keep going. And that enables us to meander into each other's camps, whether it's during hours or after hours, and say, hey, y'all want to come over, sit around our fire, or hey, we're playing some poker tonight. You're welcome to come around our table. I got cleaned out at the Maryland camp last time I played. So,
told you, bring Confederate currency. You don't lose anything.
Right?
So,
there's so much you can do. It's endless. I can't even begin to list it all. And it's all stuff you will learn and pick up as you grow.
Any questions before we dismiss the class? Yes. Is this a question or a comment?
Yes, this is a question.
Okay.
the importance of like me and him get along very well. So like me and him are like the two privates that are a team. I delegate to him, he delegates to me, we work together.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and so that's important as well. Privates being privates, doing shit for each other helps build up that ability to be an NCO at least at some point. So if you're delegating, not delegating, if you're taking charge, and you're the one doing most of and the other guys just sitting around, will make it a team effort.
All right.
So yeah.
All right. Any other questions, comments?
Just quickly. So what about written references for things like battle drills, stuff like you're talking about, salutes and stuff like that, like small pamphlets.
Get a copy of Hardee's or Casey's, whichever one your unit's using. Should be Hardee's for the Union.
Yeah. Casey's technically,
Or
but
Casey's. Too many manuals out there.
I mean, if we're going 61, Scott's.
But that's for us specifically.
So at the NCWC level, in the Union side, the standard infantry manual that we use is Hardee's. That is from the battalion down. Other pieces of information to do. Find Daniel Butterfield's Camp and Outpost, or Customs of Service. These are going to be great information tools to just figure out what your job is. How can you better yourselves? Go through, find things online. Google is an amazing tool that we have access to now. There's so much that we can find.
And also talk to your fellow reenactors, especially some of the guys that've been around a while.
Yeah, don't be afraid to, if you feel like something went wrong, but nobody's talked to you about it, don't be afraid to approach your seniors or your lowers and ask.
I mean,
comment about the books. If you are looking for a place to find them and you want them to be thoroughly period accurate so you can have them out in the open and not really care when the public's around, I've gotten some pretty good pairs at Blockade Runner. The site looks a little old. I guarantee you it's a legitimate site, but I have both volumes of Hardee's from that, and they're exactly how they work out. When you're like 10 minutes before a battle and they go, how do you do skirmish drill? You can pull it out and I'm like, oh, is anyone looking? You want to be able to have that out.
There's also a manual that is specifically just skirmishers. I forgot to bring it. It's only that thick, and it breaks down all skirmishing drill with it.
All
You
right,
don't have to look through
so
it hard.
we're going to reserve any more comments or questions for later. If you have any more, feel free to swing by the 79 camp. I'm here all night. We got a few more minutes till Brad's class, I believe, next. So we got 5 minutes.
rest, recover, drink.
Water, preferably.
And if you got stuff you don't want to get wet, you might want to consider putting it away.
Yeah.
Why?
There is rain potentially to start in about 10
I
minutes.
thought you meant we were going to trade